set, hut, hut.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sound of Golden Blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tay Von Austin.
The Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride!
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
Leave no doubt tonight. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season. And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into another CRW live stream here, February 22nd edition, and we certainly have a ton of topics to discuss. As you guys know, probably put it up as a post on the community page here on the YouTube channel, and of course put it up on social media as well. Been on vacation this past week. News was coming out, and I was like, should I go ahead and do a stream here from my phone on vacation? But I was like, I'm gonna enjoy my time. I'll just do a little catch-up stream when I get back. Planned to do it last night, but I was wore out. I'm not gonna lie. Once I got home, I spent most of the day just laying in the bed napping. So I was like, hey, we'll come at it early this morning. Got a ton to talk about on the agenda. Chad Scott, of course, his departure, what that means for Jahiem White, which you guys know something I'm very concerned about, been my favorite player for quite a while. We now know who the next president's going to be. We got some of Rich Rod's presser comments that I want to touch on, as well as the upcoming press conference dates to look forward to. We're talking a little bit about the spring showcase, not the spring game, and why that is. We're going to take a look at last week's weight warriors of the week, weight room warriors of the week, as we've been sharing them throughout the spring here. And then wrap up here towards the end talking a little bit of WVU basketball, kind of give an update on the most recent game and a little bit of a preview of today's game, I think, coming up at 1 p.m. So that's kind of what's on the docket today. I know doing this early in the morning, not a lot of people will probably tune in live. A lot of you guys will probably catch us on the playback, but that's cool too. Either way, whether you're watching this live or on the playback, if you take a second, just hit that thumbs up button, give the video a like. It really helps a ton with the YouTube algorithm. And if you're a WVU football fan, be sure to subscribe here to stay up to date on all the off-season and in-season happenings around the WVU football program. But before we get to the nitty-gritty, we're going to start off talking about Chad Scott, of course, and Jahiem White. That's kind of what's on the forefront of my mind, but I'm going to show you guys the new background piece. Check this out. So while we were gone, had one of my wife's friends house sit, dog sit for us, and she had some Legos that she put together and stuff. And I said, hey, I got a 3D puzzle of the WVU Stadium I haven't put together yet if you want to do that. And lo and behold, she did. So got a new piece to the background. Let me see if I can get it a good angle here on the camera. This thing's pretty sweet. I might try and take a video on my phone and do a YouTube short later, but you can see it's the 3D replica. You can find these on Amazon. Just type in like 3D puzzle. They have multiple different stadiums, but of course the main one that we're concerned about, let me turn it this way so the flying WV's facing the right way, is the WVU Stadium, which it's actually pretty detailed. I mean, they got the locker room right, the scoreboards, a little bit of a touchdown terrace on there. So I was pleasantly surprised with how sweet this thing is. So that'll be a new piece you'll see back here in the background, deciding exactly how it's going to sit, because right there you can't really quite tell what it is. I might have to move it down to the second shelf or set it up on its back, but pretty cool. Just wanted to lead off with that, just something fun. But hope you guys have been having a great week. I certainly did. Anytime you're not working and you're on vacation, that's always good. But let's get into it here. Let's talk a little bit about Chad Scott. Of course, that came out, a few days ago. I believe it was, 2-3 nights ago. The reports started coming out that Chad Scott was the favorite to take the job, or the leading candidate to be the running backs coach at Texas, which I think it's no surprise that Chad Scott's wanted for other gigs. He's, long time. I've talked about how much he's one of my favorite assistant coaches on staff. I think he's done a great job, obviously, with the running backs time and time again, year after year. He did an excellent job, running the offense when his time as interim head coach in the bowl game. That was one of the better offensive performances of the season, especially in the passing game. So I think Chad Scott's a guy that's well on his way to becoming a head coach. So as much as I hate to lose him, I'm glad to see him continue on his career path because I am a big fan of Chad Scott and of Texas. Of course, they've got the money to be able to pay him and steal him away because those of you that may not have known, Chad Scott was actually set to make, I think it was at least $750,000. It was, close to that $800,000 range this year. It was going to be one of the more higher paid assistants on West Virginia staff due to still having 1 year left on that contract under the Neil Brown regime where he had the offensive coordinator title and such. So he was set to make a nice chunk of change. So Texas probably offered a pretty penny to lure him away. Which let's take a look now at Chad Scott's statement following his departure to Texas, which we now know to be official as Texas has announced that yesterday or day before, I do believe. And Chad Scott, of course, great character man that he is, puts it out on social media here, his statement to Mountaineer Nation. It's been an honor and privilege for my family and I to have called West Virginia home for the past 6 years. I'm extremely grateful for my time at WVU, the staff, and all the players, especially my #big league backs. I'm going to miss saying big league backs all the time. To everyone who was a part of our time here in Mountaineer Nation, thank you for your unwavering support and passion. From Chad Scott. And of course, you go to his page and you see already got the Texas banner, running back coach Texas Longhorns, and you got the profile picture edit. So it very much has occurred. Chad Scott going to Texas, not Texas Tech rather, but he was at Texas Tech previously. But nonetheless, Chad Scott joining the Texas Longhorns, which leaves a gap on the West Virginia staff that they could choose to fill in different ways. I know that Rich Rod mentioned in his press conference, which we'll get to here in a bit, some of my standout comments I want to address from that press conference here coming up later in the stream, but I know he said coaches were reaching out from all across the country, so it seems like West Virginia will be able to fill this role with a good coach, a good solid coach, however they want to do that. Whether that means if they want to slide somebody that they've already hired over to be a running backs coach and hire someone else to coach another position, there's multiple ways they can go about this. We'll have to see how they do it. I know some have suggested, hey, what about Pat White? He's worked with running backs, I believe, at USF. Maybe that's a possibility. We'll see what happens. We should find out in the coming days. I think, another option, maybe Noel Devine, but I don't know if he has the experience yet to lead that room on his own. I think that's kind of why you liked him being the assistant running backs coach with Chad Scott, so he kind of show him the ropes, and then maybe in a year or two, then you transition Noel Devine to be your full-time running backs coach. So I still think you're probably looking for some experience there at that position. There's a lot of guys with Rich Rod ties, Tony Dews, of course, Rod McDowell was with him at Jack State. He went to Marshall. Could you maybe lure him away this late in the process? I don't know, but those are just some names that I know off the top of my head to keep an eye on. But as more names come out in that running backs coach search or whatever assistant West Virginia decides to hire, we'll keep you up to date on that on the CRW as well as we have with this coaching staff throughout the offseason. But one of the main concerns, of course, once that came out, was then the status of Jahiem White. And the reason for that being is I'll show you guys the video that came out earlier this offseason that pretty much was Jahiem White himself telling us that the one reason he returned to WVU was because of Chad Scott being retained. So that, to me, when we retained Chad Scott, was one of the biggest pieces of news because you guys know I'm a huge Jahiem White fan. I've got the jersey, his number 1 jersey on right now. I'll show you guys why I'm a little bit concerned about this. But first, let me show you guys the video that I'm talking about that I'm referencing as to why people are concerned about Jahiem White leaving now. Let me pull this up here. I believe I've got this from Pick Six Pack on social media has shared this. I think others have as well. But this is the video that came out earlier this offseason. And Pick Six Pack says with WVU running back coach Chad Scott going to Texas, Jahiem White is definitely gone. That's his opinion. I think there's still a chance because, this, of course, was before the new staff came in, before he got acclimated to the new staff, before he learned about what he could probably do in the scheme. So I think that maybe now it's a little bit different. Maybe he's learned he really likes Rich Rod. We'll have to just wait and see what happens. But this definitely does have some concerns right here to Jahiem White potentially departing after spring, and something that we will have to keep an eye on and be worried about, unfortunately. But as you see here, someone in this comments right here, you see Tanner Run 13 is the one asking the question, would you have hit the portal if Chad Scott wouldn't have came back? And Jahiem White's kind of going to non-verbally answer this with, I think, two confirming head shakes. But here's the video.
What's good, yo?
He used to rely on me for skincare advice. Now he's
So fresh.
But I probably should use Old Spice.
So there you see it. So he reads the question,
Fresh.
and then
But
a quick
I probably should use
double
Old
head
Spice.
nod there with the eyebrow raised to confirm. So, would you have hit the portal if Chad Scott wouldn't have came back? He says yes. Chad Scott's leaving. Obviously now everyone's concerned, oh no, Jahiem White's going into the portal. And I, for one, am probably a little bit more concerned about this than most, just because this guy, is my favorite player. I think if you want to be, throw the gold and blue glasses on, take the optimistic view. It's obvious that Rich Rod, no matter where he's been, has found good running backs. He's already got a couple, transfers coming in that I think are going to be really talented, in LJ Turner and Ty Edwards. So for me, it's not that I'm concerned about the running back position if Jahiem White leaves, because one thing we know about Rich Rod, he always has a solid running back, always has a good running game. But I think it's just more of me kind of loathing this era yet again, because it's like you can't hardly have a favorite player, man. It's like you get attached to guys, you start to like them, you hope they're going to stick around, and then lo and behold, it's hard to get a guy to stay all 4 years. And just to show you guys why I'm of concern of this, got this Jahiem White jersey on, and I've done my piece to support him and to support hopefully him returning. Of course, I'm a member of the MAC, I'm a member of the Country Roads Trust, but I have not one. There's a 22 gold, not two, but 3 Jahiem White jerseys, 2 from when he was 22 his freshman year, and of course I got the number 1 on now. And then also, just to further support, got his NIL shirt as well from the NIL shop. So, he's been my favorite player since his freshman season, and you guys that follow the CRW know that to be a fact. So it's definitely something I'm keeping an eye on, and I'll be in my feelings a little bit if and when it does happen after the spring. But I'm just got my fingers crossed that maybe in the spring, he sees what he can be in this system with Rich Rod's offense and chooses to stay, because it would be an absolutely loaded running back room with Ty Edwards, LJ Turner, and Jahiem White. So, little to no chance Jahiem White sees this video, but if you do, Jahiem, sure do hope you stay, man. You're a huge fan of yours, and I think that you're a really talented player. And I know someone, when I was kind of having my initial reaction on social media when it came out, and I was worried about Jahiem White leaving, someone's like, it's not like he's been a Heisman candidate. And, they were right. He hasn't. But quite frankly, in the Rich Rod offense, I feel like he could hit that level. He could be super special in that offense. So I'm hoping that he stays, but I wanted to address that. Do I think that he will, or do I think that he won't? I'm 50-50 personally. I'm literally 50-50. I can't call it one way or the other, because he has literally said, if Chad Scott wasn't around, he was planning to hit the portal. But also, maybe this new staff, this new culture, he really likes it. He really likes the scheme. So I think there's a chance that he stays, but it's definitely something to keep your eye on post-spring football. So that's kind of the big elephant in the room right now. Chad Scott's departure, how West Virginia is going to feel it, and will Jahiem White stay or will he go? And we'll keep you up to date on that here on the CRW as well. But in addition to that, I guess we got to talk about the university president, but let me share this as well. I did have this pulled up to share too in regards to Jahiem White and Chad Scott. Jahiem did put out a nice little statement there thanking Chad Scott for making him a better person, saying it's bigger than football. And I think that's another great thing about Chad Scott, not only a great football coach, but a great person as well, it seems. So wanted to share that, but other than that, big piece of news came out yesterday. Something West Virginia, knew would be coming this year with Gordon Gee retiring, and we're all kind of wanting to see how West Virginia would fill the void with a new university president, because I think by most accounts, Gordon Gee's left a little bit to be desired there in that category, to say the least, right? But hopefully whoever comes in can get things turned around for the university and move it in a positive direction. I think that we have a great athletic director that's doing great for athletics with Ren Baker. Now we need president to come in there and shake things up a little bit. And I think that West Virginia may have found someone that'll be able to do that. So let's pull up this article here. Hoppy Kirchville was the one that came out and broke this. Still hasn't officially come out from the university yet. I believe that what I saw, the reason that it hasn't come out from WVU yet is they're kind of letting the new president tie up some things at his previous university, which he's coming from Coastal Carolina, before they make the official press release announcement from the university. But what we do know is that it is going to be If I can find the right article here. There it is. Coastal Carolina President Michael Benson will be the next president at WVU. Like I said, this is from Metro News, Jeff Jenkins, but the original report, Hoppy Kercheval broke this online, and you guys that follow Three Guys, I thought it was hilarious that Pete Thamel quote tweeted Hoppy. So Hoppy scooped Pete Thamel, guys. He did it. He scooped Pete Thamel for this news of the new university president, but Coastal Carolina University President Michael Benson will be the next president at WVU, sources told Metro News reporter Hoppy Kercheval. He was one of the 10 finalists, then it got down to 3 after a lot of debate and discussion among the Board of Governors, but they focused in on Benson. They met for 7 hours behind closed doors on Thursday, and then a 15-2 vote in favor of Benson to replace Gordon Gee. The Board of Governors Chairman Rick Peel says, at a time when the landscape of higher education is changing, we think that this person can lead West Virginia University, your flagship university, forward and serve as its 27th president. I request a motion to select candidate A as WVU president and authorize the board of officers to negotiate and finalize a contractual agreement with selected candidate, which of course is Michael Benson. As you see there, courtesy of Hoppy's tweet, they're holding off on making announcements to allow Benson to clean some time up those loose ends at Coastal Carolina, as I talked about there momentarily. He has an extensive academic and administrative background, and he is the current president of Coastal Carolina, had administrative posts at Utah, Snow College, and held positions at Southern Utah University and Eastern Kentucky University. He has a degree from BYU, where he played basketball, also has degrees from Notre Dame, Johns Hopkins, and the University of Oxford. His wife, him and his wife are parents of 5 children. And if you were wondering who the other finalists were, here it is right here from Hoppy as well. The 3 finalists for the WVU president were House Speaker Roger Hanshaw, of course Michael Benson, who ends up getting the job, and UMass Chancellor Javier Reyes, who actually was at WVU before in the past as the dean of the WVU Business School. So those were your final 3, Hanshaw, Reyes, and Benson. And a new president of WVU will be Michael Benson. You see here pictured there on the picture there from Metro News. So that's the piece of news there that I want to talk about in regards to the university president. We now know that it's Michael Benson. And I think, I don't know a ton about this, not going to pretend to do so, but from people that I've seen talk about it, he was the candidate that I think a lot of people favored. I don't think a lot of people were big on hiring the Hanshaw guy for whatever reasons. Like I said, I don't know enough about it, but I think from what I've been able to gather, that this seems like a good hire on the surface for West Virginia. I think he'll be a good president and hopefully get some things turned around there at the university. But wanted to talk about that there, of course. And channel member, Mountaineer Athletes hopping in. What's going on, man? Appreciate you. He says he agree with you. It's becoming hard to be a fan of specific players anymore. At this point, I'm kind of numb and just don't care who stays or leaves anymore. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the way we have to be in this day and age. It's getting more and more to be the case that it's hard to have favorite players. And I know for a lot of people, it's hard to even keep up with who's going to be on your roster on game days, which is one reason I try and do the WVU football roster updates here on the channel so that people can maybe at least know some of the names and numbers and faces that they'll be seeing on Saturdays. But it's hard to get attached to them because of situations like these. And we'll see what happens with Jahiem. But I agree, Mountaineer Athletes. It's tough. It's tough for sure. All right, so there we are with a little bit of the president news there to go along with the Chad Scott and Jahiem White saga that we talked about there a little bit. Now let's talk a little bit about Rich Rod's press conference. I want to talk about some of the standout comments that I really liked there that he made. I got a couple of them pulled up here, I think. This first one is, of course, in regards to kind of rev share, NIL, all of that. We have to wait and see if this House settlement is approved in April to see how that moves forward with revenue sharing, which then, of course, would apply to roster limits, which would be, I think, 105. So West Virginia would have to make some cuts, which is something Rich Rod talked about. But one thing I really liked that he mentioned here, and this is from Kevin Redfern's tweet as he was covering the press conference, but Rich Rod offered some insights into how WVU football will divvy up the revenue share money, of course, assuming that House settlement is approved. And WVU is going to use an earned success model, which is another phrase that Rich Rod uses now to go along with our beloved ones of hold the rope, spot the ball, hard edge. Now it's earned success as well. And WVU is going to use that earned success model that will allocate dollars based on depth chart positioning and performance. More info coming soon, but I think the way that Rich Rod kind of termed it in, his press conference was basically, once we get to where we settle on a 2 deep, that's when we'll kind of know who's going to make what like our starting left tackle is going to make significantly more than our second string right tackle or our third string right tackle, So, and of course, I'm sure that will be kind of based on the importance of the positions as well. Your left tackle is very important. Your edge rushers are important. Your quarterback's very important. Those are going to probably be your bigger money guys for the most part. And of course, I like this model of having earned success. So, you want to make more, work harder, climb up the depth chart, get a little bit more money. I think that's a good way to incentivize players and to, continue the hard work that Rich Rod likes to see. So there was one comment that I want to talk about from the press conference that I really enjoyed and kind of stuck out to me, and I think that'll be a good model for West Virginia to follow. And then the other one that I really liked as well, just because this kind of speaks a little bit to last year's culture, last year's team versus how different things are going to be moving forward. And Rich Rod talked about that in multiple ways. He also made another comment talking about how the player's version of hard work and his idea of hard work hasn't exactly meshed yet. And I like that. I like the fact that, he's getting these guys conditioned to his culture, of course, his up-tempo style, his play hard on every down style, that hard edge mentality, right? And so he also talked a little bit about watching film last year, talked a bit about the quarterbacks, thought he liked Nico's performances against, Arizona and Cincinnati, really liked his quarterback room. But one that I thought was really a fun comment was, of course, the game against Texas Tech. We all know how bad that was. And Rich Rod said, I was watching some games, and he said, I watched Texas Tech till I threw up or I got sick. This from Skylar Callahan over at SI, talked a little bit about it. New West Virginia coach gave a brutally honest opinion about the Mountaineers' loss in Lubbock. Let's go down here a little bit, of course, and hear the comment. New West Virginia head coach Rich Rodriguez told reporters on Thursday that he watched a little bit of film from this past season and noted how ugly the loss in Lubbock was. He said, I don't want to watch too much of last year because last year is last year and there's different guys, but I was watching some cut-ups of Pitt and a little bit of that Texas Tech game until I threw up, but it wasn't as useful for me because most of the guys playing for us are not here anymore. Red Raiders dropped 52 on the Mountaineers, could put up a lot more. Of course, and West Virginia struggled on offense as much as defense. So I think that, Rich Rod kind of, maybe you can call it a little bit of a shot there, but I think it's more so just a difference of styles, difference of Rich Rod expects his guys to play hard on every down, play hard on every game, and he probably wouldn't ever expect to see his team go out on the field and have a performance like that one. So obviously, it's going to make him sick. But I really liked the way that Rich Rod talked about the upcoming team, how it's open competition at virtually every position. He mentioned, there's one or two returning starters on offense, those being, you mentioned Jahiem, who's kind of dealing with that knee right now, and Rodney Gallagher, and essentially no starters returning on defense. You could maybe say Eddie V, but of course he missed most of last year, so all new look for them to evaluate and pretty much open competition across the board, which is pretty cool. And hopefully he won't be getting sick watching any of our guys perform now once he gets them used to his culture. WVU Earl, another channel member, appreciate you always, man, says, waiting to see the team play before I make choices of players. Most of this team, I don't know. Agreed. I think that's a lot of us with the roster overhaul. We got to see how these guys perform. But of course, WVU Earl, you can know the names and numbers by sticking with the WVU football roster updates, which we'll have more of those coming, probably post spring or as we get further into spring. We see who's playing what position. We'll kind of sort that out by positions. But I understand what you mean, man. It's hard to judge these guys when you haven't really seen any of them play versus you can go watch highlights, you can go watch game tape, but it's hard to see how they're going to perform under these schemes, under this coaching staff here at WVU. So it's wait and see until the spring, really. And we'll talk about that spring here coming up because I think it's interesting the way that Rich Rod is approaching it. Not necessarily a spring game. It's actually going to be called the Spring Showcase. So we'll talk about that next. But before we do, I did want to share, Skylar Callahan put this out on social media, the upcoming dates for future Rich Rod press conferences as well. Of course, he spoke to the media Thursday, but he will speak again on Tuesday, February 25th at noon, Thursday, February 27th at noon, and Saturday, March 1st at 3:30. Those are the next upcoming press conference dates for Coach Rod here as West Virginia gets into spring football practice now, culminating in that spring showcase there. So, mark those dates on your calendar for more upcoming press conferences from the coach there. But the other piece of news, of course, we do got to talk a little bit about that not spring game, which is interesting enough. That's one thing that I noted when they jotted this down. It's the spring showcase. And you guys probably heard Rich Rod leak this a couple weeks ago on Three Guys, and I think we talked about it on a previous stream, but it is indeed going to be April 5th, the Gold Blue Spring Showcase at 1 p.m. Hold his Gold and Blue Spring Showcase at Milan Puskar Stadium, 1 p.m. on April 5th. Ticket information, fan activities announced in the upcoming weeks, so we'll know exactly what will go on there. Of course, additional information on the showcase, parking, radio, broadcasting, streaming, telecast will also be released. But West Virginia begins spring drills on Tuesday, and we'll conclude with the spring showcase on April 5th. So we have that going. But what's interesting about that is that it kind of follows a trend that's going on throughout college football. Really, some people, doing away with spring games altogether, maybe electing to have an open practice, something along those lines. And Rich Rod talked a little bit about that in the press conference as well. This is from the university's official site here, WVUsports.com. John Antoniuk wrote this one. Spring of change awaits Rodriguez and the Mountaineers. And talks a little bit about the spring showcase and a little bit about people kind of going away from spring games and why they're doing that and why this isn't titled a spring game at WVU this year. And it's going to be titled a spring showcase. And I want to talk a little bit about that because I know some people were kind of curious as to why. So this is kind of the main reason right here. And John Antoniuk talks about it here. So we'll just read a little bit of this article where he breaks it down pretty good. The good old days of college football fans waiting to watch their favorite team grow and develop during the spring are probably going to be a thing of the past. Blue Blood programs such as USC, Texas, and Nebraska are no longer having traditional spring football games. Not because they are worried about revealing schemes and plays to their opponents, which kind of used to be the concern, was you keep everything vanilla so you don't reveal anything. But now the concern is they don't want to see their rosters getting poached. You don't want to showcase, hey, this guy's really good. Another team sees it, and then they go out, poach him, and they hit the transfer portal and transfer somewhere else after the spring. Nebraska coach Matt Rule has been particularly vocal about this topic after last year's seeing several key players hit the portal right after the Cornhusker spring game. So Nebraska electing not to have one altogether. Ole Miss is planning to replace its spring game with a spring festival that includes tug-of-war contests and golf cart races. So, just some fun entertainment-based stuff, and I think you'll see some of that from WVU this year and moving forward as well. The lack of regulation concerning roster tampering has really put the sport in a difficult place. Why showcase the development of a young, up-and-coming player for somebody else to poach? West Virginia coach Rich Rodriguez began his coaching career during an era where it was important to give fans what they wanted to see. Now he's got to think long and hard about doing so. And here's some comments from Rich Rod in regards to this. Before we used to worry about, let's not show too much in the spring because of schemes and certain plays. Now, let's not show them our players because there's tampering going on and it's rampant. You don't see tampering in the NFL because they'll lose draft picks and get fined, but in college, you don't see anybody getting in trouble for tampering. Talks about Matt Rule not having a spring game because they don't want people to evaluate his players and how we can see the point. And Rich Rod says, it's like, geez, I've got this guy who's really good. And he goes out there and shows out, and somebody's going to offer him $500,000 and take him from your program. If they don't direct tamper, they'll do it through a high school coach or through somebody in the community or an agent or a friend or something. Without question, it's a conundrum. Joe fan who pays good money for season tickets has a right to be able to sample the product, so to speak. So, it's kind of the catch-22 there about what you do with this. But what seems like Ohio State are concerned about poaching, change is imminent. And Rich Rod says, there's no question we have thought about that from an open standpoint. I want our fans to watch our players, but a true spring game where you're going to really see a guy show out and all that, you're probably not going to have that. We'll have a little bit of scrimmaging and play a little football, but I'm worried about it because there's not much structure to keep the tampering away as there should be. So there it is there. And Rich Rod said he's going to have a week of meetings for his players and coaches before the portal opens. That's why the spring game has been moved from April 12th to April 5th. He wants to have that meeting with the players prior to the portal opening. But then he talks a little bit about the 105 limit, which, of course, he says not just because of that, but I think it looks like there's going to be a reduction in roster sizes, which if that House settlement is approved in April that we talked about, that's what will make the roster limit to 105. And if they are going to cut it to 105, there's going to be a lot of guys that get cut, and that's going to be really hard. A guy who does everything right, who's maybe just not quite good enough to be under 105, but you want them on the roster, you're going to have to cut them now. Rodriguez said he's holding out hope that the final number will be larger than 105. There are going to be some really good players and some hardworking young men that we have to cut to fit the roster size, and that's not going to be fun at all. Unusual times for sure. Spring work begins for the Mountaineers on Tuesday. So just wanted to address that because I know some people probably seen that it was being called the Spring Showcase, and I wanted to touch a little bit on why. And we'll find out here soon exactly what activities will be ongoing. I'm planning on attending the spring game as I do most years. I know we'll get to see a little bit of scrimmaging, but I think there will still be some fun activities probably. I know last year they opened it up, let fans come on the field, meet some of the players and stuff. That was really cool. Got a picture taken with Wyatt Milam myself, and really had a good time at the spring game despite it not being, traditional kind of scrimmage type setting. And I think we'll have that yet again this year, but interested to see what we do there. So that's kind of the main topics I had. Other than that, we just got some news and notes to clean up on, and then we'll shift gears, talk a little basketball. But the other thing, of course, was last week's Weight Room Warriors. I had to share this with you guys because we talked about this, and I've shared these throughout the spring, so we got to keep up to date with that. And last week we had Nate Gabriel on the defensive line, Jacob Boyce there in the defensive back room, William Davis also in the defensive back room, and new offensive lineman Walter Youngbear as your 4 Weight Room Warriors from this past week. Then a bit of adjacent news that some of you guys may have seen this as well. Jordan Leslie had the domestic battery charges dropped that came out a couple of weeks ago, which I think that's good for Jordan Leslie because, number one, he was never going to get hired anywhere with, charges hanging over his head. So, that's step one to him potentially getting another job in the future. And then also it's good because this probably notes that it was a bit more of a misunderstanding than a domestic battery situation as it was charged as, which is also obviously a positive. You don't want that happening. But from Mike Oster here on WVSportsNow.com, Jordan Leslie now free of legal trouble, had his domestic battery charge dismissed according to the magistrate court system in West Virginia. Of course, these came back on November 9, just a week after being fired from WVU. He was booked at 4:40 a.m. at the North Central Regional Jail in Monongalia County that November, after being fired from his position on October 29th. And then I think that's, let's see, what have we got here? Yeah, it's pretty much all, nothing, everything else just kind of talks about his time at WVU. Of course, then Jeff Kuntz taking over for him. But now that these have been dropped, I would not be surprised to see Jordan Leslie end up on a staff somewhere, linebackers coach, defensive line coach, something like that. He may not get a DC job again for a little bit. Probably have to prove himself again on that one. But I think he could end up a position coach somewhere in the near future now. So wanted to share that news because I know some people have probably seen when that initially came out. And now that we have the update on it, wanted to share that as well. And then the last little piece of football news that I wanted to share here was just an update on the recruiting trail. Because we all know Brody McCorder, one of the best quarterbacks in the upcoming 2026 class, had previously been committed to WVU. Once Neil Brown was fired, reopened his commitment, but West Virginia stayed in the mix. We've seen Rich Rod visiting him. We've seen Rich Rod, FaceTiming him as well. So it seems like it is still a very high priority for WVU. Out of Kingston, Georgia, 6'2", 205, nearly a top 160 player in the country, a top 15 quarterback in the class of 2026, and he also has named his top 7 schools, and West Virginia still remains in the mix there as he cuts his list down to 7. You see the graphic here shared by Brody McCorder. West Virginia on the list along with Indiana, Syracuse, Wisconsin, Auburn, Colorado, and Mississippi State. So we'll keep an eye on this one as West Virginia will, of course, add a quarterback in next year's class. Brady McCorder looked like he was going to be the guy. Could he still be the guy? It's definitely a possibility. We'll see what happens as we follow that recruitment, and we'll keep you guys up to date on the 2026 WVU recruiting class here as it continues to form. These things start early on, and West Virginia did a great job last year having a ton of commits prior to the fall even, and maybe they're going to try and keep that up here under the new staff, and I think that they'll do a good job here recruiting with Rich Rod as well in this 2026 class, which I do believe we have a commit or two in that 2026 class, if I'm not mistaken. We have a verbal. Do I have that pulled up here? I think we have 2. Yeah, and I've done videos on them on the channel previously, but just to update that, where the 2026 class is already 2 commitments in tow here. Tight end out of Ohio and Sam Hamilton, and a speedy wide receiver out of Florida and Jafar Jean Noel. The 2 2026 commits West Virginia has thus far, and we'd love to add Brody McCorder to that list in the near future if possible. But that's pretty much all I had football-wise. Wanted to touch on all of that there. Several things, of course, Jahiem White's status is something we'll keep an eye on. Post-spring football, we know he's going to be here throughout the spring. Once that portal opens, then that's when we have to be on the lookout. Of course, we'll see how West Virginia fills the staff position now after Chad Scott's departure. We know Michael Benson's going to be the departure. I don't know what word I just said. They don't know what the hell that was. But Chad Scott's departure. We'll see what West Virginia does with the staff moving forward. Michael Benson, going to be the new president, and the university will have the official announcement there coming in the near future. Got some Rich Rod's press conference updates and the upcoming presser dates, which I think are Tuesday, Thursday, and then again on March 1st, I believe. And then, of course, talked a little bit about the upcoming spring showcase. No longer the Gold Blue Spring game, but the Gold Blue Spring showcase, April 5th at 1 p.m. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about WVU basketball, because we had a close game the other night that probably shouldn't have been as close as it was. West Virginia looked like they were going to win that handily when you get down to was about 10 seconds left, and you were up by, I think, 9, but end up with a 3-point win. You get a spot on the bad beat segments there with Scott Van Pelt, obviously, when the line, I think, finished at 3.5. But West Virginia is able to close it out, get an important win, which really helps them with their NCAA tournament status, which is something else I wanted to pull up, because they do remain firmly in the field on most bracketologies. I will pull up a couple and show you guys where they sit on the CBS bracketology and the ESPN bracketology here after we talk a little bit about this game here against Cincinnati. And then we'll do a brief preview of today's upcoming game, which you can see, I believe, at 1 p.m. today on ESPN Plus, as West Virginia takes on a top 10 ranked Texas Tech club. But let's talk a little bit about the most recent win for the Mountaineers. Take a look at some stats here as West Virginia handles Cincinnati 62-59 in a Gold Rush game. Brings their overall record to 16-10, and they are now 7-8 in the Big 12 Conference, which I think they need 2 to 3 more wins to really feel secure about that NCAA tournament berth. And we'll look at the schedule here in a second as well and see where those wins may come and where I think they could get them. But field goal-wise, 40% for West Virginia, 41% for Cincinnati. From the three-point line, West Virginia only hit 6, which we know their magic number throughout the season has kind of been 9. They've won most games when they've hit 9 threes. So good to see West Virginia in this game. Really did a great job hitting their free throws, for one, which we'll talk about momentarily, but also a great job attacking the basket. A lot of back cuts was a way West Virginia got buckets late in this game, especially Javon Small hit him with a couple when they were really trying to defend him. Some good sets from Darren DeVries led to some easy buckets for Javon Small at the rim. And I think that's why the 3-point percentage, or the 3 points taken, were a little bit lower as well. But West Virginia shoots 33%, and they hold Cincinnati to 30%. West Virginia's done a great job 3-point defense this year. West Virginia, 86% on free throws, and they hold Cincinnati to 29%. Awful game at the line for Cincinnati. But one of the main reasons West Virginia won this game, out-rebounding Cincinnati 40-32, including grabbing 12 offensive rebounds. Monty Hansberry had to have at least 5 of those, I think. But nonetheless, West Virginia, if they out-rebound their opponent, they have a really good record this season, which is rare that it happens. We know West Virginia lacks in size. They lack kind of true big men, but they really do put forth the effort a lot of times, and they did that again in this game. 12 assists for West Virginia to only 8 for Cincinnati. Cincinnati with 4 steals, West Virginia only with 2. Not used to seeing West Virginia's steal number so low here in the Darren DeVries era. Same with blocks, 2 for West Virginia, 4 for Cincinnati. The Mountaineers turned it over 10 times. Cincinnati only turns it over 6 times, but West Virginia was able to turn that into 11 points, whereas Cincinnati only managed to have 8 points off West Virginia turnovers. Fast break points, 7-4. Points in the paint. That's what I was talking about, guys. 30 points in the paint for West Virginia, so just below 50% of your scoring came from in the paint there. 15 fouls called on Cincinnati, 10 on West Virginia. About time that turned around. West Virginia had a few games where they had been called for more fouls than their opponent. Like I said, West Virginia with a 9-point lead with 10 seconds to go, and the crazy finish as Cincinnati scores a 3, gets a steal on an inbound, so with the press, hits another 3, 4 seconds left. They get another turnover from West Virginia as the ball's batted out of bounds, called out on West Virginia. Cincinnati gets it. Javon Small loses his man late in the inbounds process. They get a wide open look at a 3. Luckily don't hit it. West Virginia manages to win the game. But let's look at some individual standouts here in this one. I think you got to talk about Jizzle James a little bit because, yes, he got 13 points after being held scoreless in the first meeting, but he was on an absolute heater. He was averaging over 25 points in, I think, the last 3 or 4 games, and he was 6 of 20 and 1 of 8 from the three-point line in this game. Sincere Harris doing a lot of good jobs there on that defense as he does, kind of against the opposing team's best guard a lot of the time. I can't say enough about Buck Harris's defense there, and holding Jizzle James to 13, a good accomplishment. And you got to shout out Dan Skillings. He ends up with 10 points, but 2 of 2 on the three-point line. He was the one that hit both of those threes to cut this to a 3-point game. Really crazy. One of them was like a leaner, didn't look like it was going to go in. Swished it. The other one he banked in, but big plays from him, so just wanted to cut him out for that. Deserves some credit. But for West Virginia, I think obviously, you don't get the scoring that you typically get from Javon. You're used to seeing him around 19 or 20. He does end up with 16 after hitting some late free throws and getting some clutch buckets late for the Mountaineers, but he was really doing a great job distributing, 4 assists in this game. I think the standout player for me, Amani Hansberry, 7 offensive rebounds. I knew it was at least 4 or 5, but 7 offensive rebounds. Incredible job by Amani there. Some of those were really big. Ends up with another double-double. I believe it's his second of the season. 17 points, 13 rebounds. And then Jonathan Powell stepped up, hit a couple of big shots, ends up with 12 points. 2 of 7 on the threes, but the 2 threes that he hit were both extremely clutch. I think one cut it to a 1-point lead. One may have extended West Virginia's lead there late. So really big shots from Jonathan Powell, and that's really what you need. If you can get 2 or 3 threes from Jonathan Powell, you can get Amani Hansberry close to double figures. I think if you can get JP and Amani both in double figures or at least close to it, that's going to help you most games because Javon's going to get you probably 15 plus in nearly every game. Quiet night for Toby O'Connie after he had some really good scoring performances. Good game from Sincere Harris, as we mentioned on the defensive end there. He also grabbed 6 rebounds, scored 6 points. He does a good job attacking the bucket at times. 9 rebounds for Jonathan Powell was big as well. The young guard, the freshman, getting in there, getting in the mix. And then off the bench, not a ton of scoring, but you do get some 6 points from Yesfu, which were big. 3 points from Andre, who also added a steal, a block, 2 assists, and 4 rebounds. Andre continues to do the little things right, and KJ Tenner adds an assist there as well. Some of the individual standouts there for WVU. So let's look at the upcoming schedule here, and then we'll talk about today's upcoming game against Texas Tech before we wrap up here. So I believe I mentioned that I thought West Virginia needed to grab 4 more wins across these final games, which now you're down to 5 games left, and you probably need to win 3 more, in my opinion. Would have loved, if you could have grabbed BYU or Baylor, that would have helped a ton. You weren't able to get it. Cincinnati, you do get 1. Now I think you've got to steal one of these 3 road games. Texas Tech today is going to be a tall task. We'll talk about that here momentarily. I'll do a little preview of that, and I'll make a brief prediction, I guess. But I think TCU and UCF at home are almost must-wins. You almost need to win both of those games, your final 2 home games, and still 1 on the road to feel pretty secure about your NCAA status. And the good part about it is TCU is right around where you are in the conference. They've been playing really good, though, so it's not going to be an easy game. It's a late tip as well. UCF, I feel a little bit more confident about. But then you got to go on the road and beat either one of the Utah schools, BYU or Utah, or try and steal one against a top 10 team against Texas Tech today. Now, if you're able to beat Texas Tech and get you another quad 1 win, I think you could probably only win, 2 more games and be okay if you get that big win over Texas Tech. But, playing devil's advocate here and assuming that they don't win that game, I think you got to win your 2 home games and still one of those road games against the Utah squads. But that's just my opinion. I think as of now, most bracketologies have you firmly in the field. Let's take a look here at both ESPN's and CBS's bracketology, see where they have the Mountaineers slated currently. So this was last updated yesterday morning by Joe Lenardi. And here's where we are. Let's go here. On the bubble, we still have one of the last 4 byes, which we want to be in this last 4 bye section more than the last 4 in section, because the last 4 in section, you're probably going to be in those first 4 games, which play, on Tuesday prior to the tournament, kind of officially kicking off on Thursday. You get those 2 to 4 games on Tuesday or whatever it is. So hopefully being in the last 4 buys would keep us out of that. But we are, listed on the bubble, but firmly in the field here, according to Joe Lenardi on the ESPN side. Let's see how CBS feels. I believe they also have us in last time I checked. Let's take a look here. Jerry Palm at CBS. We're not in the first 4 games on any of his bracketology, but let's see where we are at. We're currently in as a 10 seed. He has us matched up against Maryland. We'd be playing in Cleveland there. The 2 seed there would be Texas A&M. The 1 seed would be Alabama. We'd also be in a bracket with Iowa State if it was to turn out that way, but firmly in the field there, according to Jerry Palm of CBS. So both bracketologies have us in here, which is good. And, of course, I think you still got to win a couple of games, but they're probably assuming you'll win 2 to 3 more games, which is one of the reasons they have us in there. So, with that being said, let's take a look at the upcoming game today against Texas Tech, a really good team that's come on as of late. Grant McCaslin looks like he's going to be hell of a coach there for the Red Raiders. Look at both of these teams here. A little bit of a look at the game cast. Texas Tech favored by double digits as it stands here going into it. Total 135.5. Texas Tech coming in 20-6, 11-4 in Big 12. Of course, West Virginia, as we mentioned, 16-10, 7 of 8 in conference. ESPN FPI giving Texas Tech an 83% chance to win. Team stats, points per game, West Virginia averaging 69. They're going to have to do a good job defensively on a Texas Tech team that averages nearly 82 points per game. So they want to get out and run a little bit, it would seem. West Virginia only giving up 64 points per game, so something's got to give there. That's a bit of a movable object meets irresistible force. Since Texas Tech also doing a great job defensively, only giving up 67 points per game. Texas Tech scorching hot and shooting nearly 48% from the field. West Virginia at 43. Texas Tech grabs 37 rebounds per game. The Mountaineers grab 33. Texas Tech dishes out 17 assists compared to West Virginia's 14. West Virginia does grab 4.3 blocks a game. It's such a crazy number for a team that lacks height. But Texas Tech right at 3 blocks a game themselves. West Virginia 8 steals per game. Texas Tech 7. Texas Tech actually coming in off of a loss. West Virginia coming in off of the win, which honestly, I don't like the fact that Texas Tech lost to TCU, because I think if they win that game, I believe their next opponent coming up is Houston, and maybe you have them in a bit more of a trap game scenario, but now they're going to be wide awake and not sleeping through this one at any means after coming off a loss to the last 5 games there. For both teams, Texas Tech actually lost 2 out of their last 5, losing to Arizona and TCU, but absolutely dominated Oklahoma State, beat Baylor pretty handily, but had a double overtime win over Arizona State. West Virginia lost 3 out of their last 5, one of those being an overtime loss, but are coming off the win over Cincinnati. So let's take a look at each team's kind of standout players thus far this season, and then I'll throw a little prediction at you guys. Texas Tech, some guys you want to watch for here. Of course, JT Toppin is the big one. Leads the team in blocks, rebounds, and points. Just a really talented player as well. You're looking at a guy that's got a chance to, probably be a good NBA player as well here in the sophomore season now, really showing out. Like I said, Grant McCaslin doing a great job. He's taller than most players on the West Virginia roster, minus Ed Andre, but also extremely athletic, can shoot the ball a little bit as well. 57% is shooting from the field, incredible, and nearly 31% from three-point range also. Then you have some other guys to really worry about that can shoot the rock here. You look at McMillan, 45.5% from 3. Anderson, 40% from 3. So there's 2 guys over 40% from 3. And you get in here at Cambridge, hasn't played but in 6 games, but that guy's 57% from the three-point line. Yahoo's 57%. And then Walton right near 40%. So they do have some good shooters on this team as well. You have a couple of guys. They have, 4 guys averaging at least 1 steal per game with Toppin, Williams, Anderson, and Hawkins. But I think Toppin is the guy that really makes this all go. But 3 guys in double figures, those being Williams, the fellow forward, and, of course, McMillan. McMillan really can shoot it as well. Chance McMillan there, the guard. He's a senior, as Darian Williams is the junior forward there at 6'6", 225. So some players to keep an eye on there for Texas Tech in the game today. Like I said, coming up at 1, it'll be on ESPN+. But let's look at the Mountaineers season leaders to this point as well. Of course, Javon Small, the one that stands out in most areas, leading the team in points, assists, and steals. Points dropped a little bit down to 18.5. I believe he was up, 19 or 20, but still, I believe that's near top of the Big 12, if not the very top of the Big 12. I know it was for a long period this season, but he's also averaging 5.5 assists and nearly 2 steals per game, shooting 35% from three and nearly 43% from the field. Tucker remains second on the team in scoring, despite, of course, being out for the rest of the year. Funny enough, but Hansberry nearing being a double-digit scorer on average himself, averaging right at 10 points per game and 6 rebounds, shooting 29% from three and 43% from the field. We'd like to see him get that three-point percentage up a little bit, but I think he had that, kind of slump there a few games ago where he wasn't really hitting. That kind of hurt it a little bit, but he's very capable of shooting, as we saw him hit big shot there last game. Toby Oconee right at 9 points per game, 4 rebounds, 1 block, and 1 steal. Jonathan Powell, 8.5 points per game, up to over 3 rebounds per game now after having that 9 rebound performance last game. 34% from three-point range, 37 from the field. I know percentage-wise he may not be the best, but I think he's kind of your guy. If you need a three-point shot, you're probably going to go to Jonathan Powell. Been streaky at times, but he's a freshman coming into his own, and when he gets hot, he can really hit him. Yesufu's been the bench player. That's been the great scorer off the bench. When West Virginia needs points off the bench, it's usually coming from Yesufu, who continues to just impress me. Sometimes he gets to the rim, and you don't even know how he gets it up on the glass, much less gets it to go in. But he's really good at those runners, those floaters, and those layups attacking the rim. He's shooting 41% from the field and 33% from the three-point line. Sincere Harris, 6 points per game, but averages nearly 2 steals per game and a block as well. Eric Andre at 1.5 blocks per game, 5 points per game for him. And he is shooting over 70% from the field. A lot of his points coming to the rim on dunks and layups. Then you see kind of the other guys rounding out the stats there for West Virginia. So there's a look at kind of both teams and a look at the individual leaders for both teams. Like I said, I think it's going to be a tall task for West Virginia, but they've shown to be up to that task throughout the season. So I think West Virginia will cover the spread. I think, it's 11.5 that we saw. I think West Virginia will keep this within single digits, but I just cannot pick them to win this game, unfortunately. Do I think it could happen? Sure. Am I going to cheer for them at 1 o'clock? Hell yeah, of course, absolutely. And we'll see where the chips fall. And if they get this win, it would be a huge one, a huge boost to their tournament status, and maybe even could put you off the bubble at that point. But I think that Texas Tech is kind of firing on all cylinders. I know they're coming off a loss, but that's probably going to wake them up a little bit. They've got some height and some length that's going to be hard for West Virginia to contend with. They score the ball at a pretty high clip. West Virginia's probably going to have to score the ball a little bit in this game to try and keep pace. I know West Virginia does a great job defensively, but I think they'll hold Texas Tech below their average, but I think they'll come up slightly short. I'm going to go Texas Tech 76, West Virginia 70 as my prediction in this one. I think Texas Tech gets the win, but fingers crossed that I'm wrong, guys, and West Virginia gets the win at 1 o'clock today, and you guys can tune into that one on ESPN+. But I just want to say before we wrap up here in a second, I appreciate you guys that did hop in here live. Did have a couple channel members come in here and chat, which is pretty cool. Didn't think we'd have a lot of live viewers with this coming early in the morning, but some of you guys may watch it on a playback. If you do that, still, you can do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button. Helps a ton with the YouTube algorithm. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with the West Virginia football off season and, of course, in season. And if you really want to support us, you can become a channel member, and that helps keep this mic recording and that camera rolling. Get all kinds of bonus content. You get behind-the-scenes content. You get extra content throughout the football season, including player grades, snap counts, film reviews, all kinds of stuff. And so for as little as a couple bucks a month, you can help us that way. We really appreciate that support. But if you can't, the fast, easy, and free way is just hitting that thumbs up button and subscribing to the channel. If you didn't get a chance to hop in here live, throw some thoughts in the comments. Always appreciate those, whether it's on Chad Scott, who you want to fill that role, whether it's on whether you think Jahiem White or stay, your thoughts on the president, your thoughts on the spring showcase, anything you got there. Always welcome those interactions, and all those things will be stuff that we'll be keeping an eye on and providing future updates here on the CRW. But that's pretty much all I had, but I want to leave you guys. I want to close the show a little bit different here. I'm going to use some music to play us out here. And funny enough, I think I shared it on social media in the past, but it was like a year and a half ago or so. My wife's new music video premiered, and it just dawned on me that I never shared it with you guys on the channel and played it here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to close out the show, let her music video play, and then we'll end the stream. So I'll go ahead and say thank you guys. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz. Until next time, let's go Mountaineers. We'll play it out. You guys enjoy this. Wild and Wonderful is the song title, fitting for us here in West Virginia, of course. And it's a song about West Virginia, so still fitting for the stream. But this is from my wife, Jada Madison. You guys check her out if you haven't in the past. But appreciate you guys, and let's go Mountaineers.
As I sit up on the mountains, wondering where life's gonna take me next. Yeah, the breeze of the wind had to guide me back home where my soul is meant to be. Sweet old West Virginia, she's called me back yet again. And I just couldn't wait to see us been a while. I will always come back, my friend. I've been far away for so long. I can't help but wonder how I keep getting drawn back to my roots. They're so strong. She keeps me grounded. She gave me this song. Wild and wonderful, they call her Mountain Mama. Have you ever seen the sun rise or how the sun sets in the holler? Sweet old West Virginia, she's called me back yet again. I just couldn't wait to see her. It's been a while. I will always come back, my friend. I've been far away for so long. I can't help but wonder how I keep getting drawn back to my roots. They're so strong. She keeps me grounded. She gave me this song. Why don't you come on down and witness for yourself? Magic in these mountains, these towns, a community like nothing else. Sweet old West Virginia, she's called me back yet again. I just couldn't wait to see her. It's been a while. I will always